Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of our fingerprint series. The big topic of the day is minutiae, like this thing here, and this squiggly line, and this doohickey, and this, and this, and these. We'll do a very quick 10-second summary of part 1. We'll cover latent prints, and visible prints, and plastic prints. Under the dissecting scope, we'll get up close and personal with my sweat glands. Yes, you heard me right. I'll take 60 seconds and show you how to lift a print. And finally, we'll learn the differences between 10 different minutiae and have front row seats as we zoom in and look at a whole bunch of prints, finding as many different minutiae as we can. All right, let's get started. So if you're just tuning in, be sure to check out our first video on the 8 general patterns of fingerprints, and that way you'll be caught up to speed. So very quickly here, we have loops, arches, and whorls. An ulnar loop enters and exits towards the pinky. A radial loop enters and exits towards the thumb. Both loops, all loops, have only one delta. Plain arches have a ridge that gradually come up and back out, and tented arches have a ridge that has a very sharp peak. Arches have no deltas at all. Next, the plain whorl has one circular ridge that crosses an imaginary line between the two deltas and enters again, once again. Central pocket loop whorls don't have a single circular ridge that will cross the two deltas. The double loop whorls have two cores shaped sort of in the yin-yang shape. And finally, accidental whorls have two or more shapes within the pattern, or just don't follow any of the other rules. All right, so that's our real quick summary on video 1. Okay, so the 3 types of prints. We got latent prints. Latent prints are invisible. They're invisible, yet we can detect them because we can just use dust. Now, how are they invisible yet they leave a print? Well, that's because our hands have sweat glands. And also we have sebaceous glands. We have oil glands, not on the palms of our hands, but we can touch hairy parts of our bodies, and now we have sweat and oil. All you got to do is contact any surface, a wall, a table, anything like that, and you got yourself a latent print. Then all you got to do is dust and lift, and you got yourself a print. Visible prints don't need to be dusted because they're already visible. Any finger that contacts blood or ink or paint, and then contacts a table or any kind of surface, that's what you call a visible. It's visible to the naked eye without the need for dusting. And finally, we got plastic prints. Now these leave a sort of a 3D impression into a substance that can give, for example, soap or wax or putty, even dust. The point is that it has this, it can leave this 3D, because the other two were two-dimensional. This leaves a three-dimensional because it's pushed into the substance, giving yourself a 3D ridge impression. Now, as we're on plastic prints, I actually took a bit of wax, cooled it down, and what I got was pretty neat. I got a 3D impression. Now, if we want to further individualize a print, we can study sweat pore placement and location, as well as thickness of ridges and how continuous or discontinuous these ridges are. And this is using what we call tertiary classification. So I took this wax then, this plastic print, and put it under the dissecting scope, and it's not as well, it didn't come out as well on your computer screen as I was hoping, but it was still pretty cool. You still got this 3D image which holds a lot of information, a lot more information than any two-dimensional print can hold, because you got 3D now. When I was thinking about sweat pore placement, I stuck my finger under the dissecting scope, and at just 10x, I was just fascinated and wanted to share what I saw. You can see the sweat glands secreting sweat, and it is just incredible. Then I thought, well, why stop there? So this is what I saw at 25x, which is incredibly fun to do since schools usually don't have dissecting scopes. As students, we're always introduced to the microscope. Well, you can't really stick your finger under the microscope. So with dissecting scopes, you can put any kind of object under the scope, and so you can easily put your hand under there, and so you can see the sweat glands secreting sweat and reaching the surface through the sweat pores, and well, these and so a plastic print can capture sweat where the sweat glands are, where the sweat pores are, as well as all of that 3D imaging as just as you see right here on your screen. So you see just how much more weight your case could carry in a courtroom with the incredible detail of a plastic print. Let's just take 60 seconds and do a quick lift. So here we got ourselves some bichromatic powder. Bichromatic just means two colors. It works on dark surfaces and light surfaces because it has black and silver powder in it. So all you need is just a little bit of dust, not a lot. This stuff is pretty nasty, and it can, it can be quite messy. So just ever so slightly, you just kind of touch, and before you know it, you got yourself an image. You gotta be careful because you can smear this stuff. Now, you take some tape. It really doesn't matter what kind of tape, just any kind of clear tape. It's nothing special. And of course, I forgot to blow off the excess dust, but you get the idea. You peel the tape, and you got yourself. And you don't need much. You don't need too many different points of identification. There really is no minimum, in a court. But obviously, the more you have, the stronger your case will be. Here's the second one, and there you have it. There's a couple of prints right there. So finally, the minutiae. This is what we've been waiting for this whole time. So we'll cover 10 different minutiae. There's even more. These are the 10 most, I would say, the 10 most common. Now, ridge endings are really any sort of let's say you got a fork here. A ridge ending this right here would be a ridge ending. It doesn't matter which way it's pointing. It could be pointing, so this one's pointing to the left. It really doesn't matter. You can consider, if this went like this, these two like this, well, here, this would be another ridge ending here, so then you'd consider this a ridge ending. And here's another ridge ending right here. So right here, we can say we're looking at 3 different ridge endings. A dot is just as you suspect. A dot is just a dot. A dot could have a sweat pore in it, and it might not. It could and it could not. So a dot is pretty simple. An island is a short line. It doesn't. Again, and of course the direction doesn't matter. A short line. We call this an island. A lake now. Sounds like we're using a lot of water descriptions. A lake, or you can say enclosure, would look like this. So you got yourself the island, and you got yourself a lake. Bifurcation, this is, kind of like as we saw at the top there, a fork. This here, we would call this a bifurcation because this ridge starts as 1 and it ends up as 2. So here we have a bifurcation. And again, a direction doesn't matter. This way, this is also we consider a bifurcation. We really talk about it as it diverges, not as it converges. So bifurcation. Direction doesn't matter. A trifurcation, you guessed it, same exact thing, except at that same exact point, it splits into 3. Trifurcation. Now, a double bifurcation, this is a little bit trickier. This is, say you got a ridge here, and you have this here. This is called a bifurcation. Now, if a ridge ends up branching again, but just a little bit later, this is called a double bifurcation. It's different than the trifurcation because here the ridge will divert 3 different directions all at the same point, but a double bifurcation will break away at some point, and then it'll break away again at a later point. And again, direction doesn't matter. It could be facing this way, up, down, doesn't matter. So that's your double bifurcation. Your hook, so you got a ridge like this, a hook will look like that. Or you can call it a spur. You got a ridge, any kind of ridge, and you got a little hook like that. There you have it. An opposed bifurcation will look like this. So you say you have a you got this, and here you have an opposed bifurcation. It can be considerably, they can be considerably closer too, but the point is that there is a little bit of a little bit of line between the two. A ridge crossing almost looks like an X, like this. Here's a ridge crossing. So you see how these are close to each other. They look close to each other. You know what? Let's do one more. Let's do one more. Bridge. I'm left-handed and I'm using my right hand. My handwriting doesn't get much better with my left hand anyway. Bridge, you have 2 parallel ridges, and they're just connected somehow. They could be perpendicular, they could be off to the side a little bit. That's called a bridge. Direction never matters. So now we got 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different types of minutiae that we can identify and find on a fingerprint. Let's start. So let's just take a look here. I'll give you just a second to see if you can find any of these minutiae before I do. You can even just pause the video. So if we zoom in, I do see, we can just start with a ridge ending. If we zoom in here, I see here we got a ridge ending here because it ends right at this point. Here's another one and it ends right at this point. And here's a whole bunch of them. You say, well, what? There's obviously something in the way there. Well, no, that's just their fingerprint. So here's a ridge ending. Here's another ridge ending. Here's another one. A whole bunch of ridge endings. I also see bifurcation. You see? Here's a bifurcation. Bifurcation. I also see double bifurcations. Check this out. Here's a bifurcation, and a little bit down the road, you have another fork, a second fork in the road. There's a double bifurcation. Your eyes start to bug out after a while. Look, trying to find these. Here's another double bifurcation. Here's one, and then this ridge ends up. Oh wow! And this could even be a triple bifurcation. Look at that. Look at that. Not a trifurcation, but a triple bifurcation. 1, 2, 3. So there's one kind of print. Let's see. Let's look at another one here. All right, here's another one. Let's zoom in here. Let's see if we can find a bridge. Let's see if we can find a bridge in here somewhere. I see some bifurcations. Here's a bifurcation. Can you find a bridge in here? A bridge. Remember what was a bridge? It's two parallel lines. Here we go. Two parallel lines. Not all prints are going to have everything, obviously. And two parallel lines connected, kind of like an H. There you have you got yourself a bridge. Okay, very nice. Let's see. Can you find a? Let's see here. Let's look at another one here. Can you find a lake? Try to find a lake in here. Can you find a lake? Let's zoom in here a little bit. Can you find a lake in here? Right in the core. Right in the core, you can see a lake. Here it is. It goes around. There's a lake. And we can consider this an island right here. Here's an island. It's long enough. It's kind of close to being a dot, but I don't know if you want to call this a dot here. Here's another island here. There you have it. And I see a trifurcation. Do you see it? A bifurcation and a trifurcation. Here it is. Stops here. It moves 1, 2, and 3. All breaks away at the same exact spot. Here's a bifurcation right here. This looks like another bridge right here. Like that. All right, very good. Very good. And so, the idea is that you kind of get used to, and you can even, take a picture of any of your fingers, and zoom in on your phone or whatever, or even just take a pencil, dust, anything, and see if you can see how many of these different minutiae you could make out on your own. Here's another one. See what we got here. Let's see if we can find a hook. See if we can find a hook. I'll give you a clue. Look up a little bit. Look up. You see it? Zoom in. Got a whole bunch of bifurcations, but here's your spur or hook. There it is. You got it. It's like a bifurcation, but one of the ridges is pretty short. One of the ridges that diverges is fairly short. So you'd call that like compared to this one here, this one's really long, just like this side here. So you'd say, you know, you could even call this, right at this exact point if you want a bifurcation. But anyway, so here you got your spur or your hook. Okay, well, yeah, um, here's you got a ridge ending here, ridge ending here. Um, that's really it. So, I mean, thank you for your attention. Study well. Make sure to check out the third video in this three video series, where I will allow you to test your knowledge, to test your comprehension of everything from the beginning. Everything from the 8 general patterns to the minutiae and the different types of patterns. And so you can see if you really got it or not. So, again, thank you very much, and we'll catch you next time.